is the worry about China that is driving the United States to India. It is that worry. And it is a worry about China that is driving India to the United States. So the elephant in the room, if I may say so, is China for both India and the United States. The common factor in many of our calculations is definitely China. Now, at this stage, let me pause and say, and let me now talk in terms of the actual development of the relationship between the US and India. Now, a certain amount of historical context I think is very, very important. In the 1940s, you had President Franklin Roosevelt, and Franklin Roosevelt supported Indian independence and Indian freedom. Of course, he did not support it with the same vigor as Chiang Kai-shek. As I tell our Taiwanese friends, we are very pro-KMT in India. I tell my DPP friends that we are very pro-KMT in India because KMT strongly supported Indian independence. KMT strongly, Chiang Kai-shek and Madam Chiang strongly told Churchill to leave India to the Indians and give India freedom. So we are very grateful to China for that. Roosevelt also had that kind of support. America followed a policy, under Roosevelt, America followed a policy which was anti-colonial. In that sense, it was anticipating the changes that would come in Asia. Unfortunately, after Roosevelt, Truman came, Eisenhower came, and the Europeanists came back. And then, from then on, America started adopting a policy which is hostile to Asian nationalism and friendly to European colonialism. You saw the effect of that in Vietnam, in which the United States stepped into the shoes of the French. The French were beaten and the Americans were beaten by the Vietnamese. But regrettably, the Americans stepped into the shoes of the Europeans and they avoided being friendly with Asian nationalists. Although in my view, Asian nationalists would have been a natural ally of a democratic America. In the Arab world, a very dangerous tendency took place. You have Nasser, you had the Baath Party, you had all these secular nationalists in the Arab world. Because they were nationalists, the Europeans did not like them. And if Europeans did not like them, Americans followed the Europeans. So then the Americans started supporting religious extremists and fundamentalists. This entire development of Wahhabism, the development of Islamic extremism, is with the support of the Western world against Arab nationalists. So you challenge Nasser by the Muslim Brotherhood. You challenge the Baath Party by radical Islamic parties. And you support radical Islamic parties across. Today that same thing is happening in Syria, in which extreme radical Islamist parties, including terrorist groups, are being supported by the United States and supported by the European Union. You've got suicide bombing. As I said, I've been to Damascus, not once, but more than once. I've seen the bombings there, I've seen the killings there, I've seen Christians who have been completely killed in Damascus, I've seen the fear in the eyes of the people at the fanatics who are trying to destroy stability in Syria. And people are crying to me. The Patriarch of Antioch. Antioch is the oldest church in Christendom. 200 years before the Church of Rome, the Church of Antioch was set up. The Patriarch of Antioch held my hands and told me, why is the Christian world against us? Why is the Christian world standing by and helping those who are killing Christians in my country? That is the so-called freedom fighters, all who are Islamists and frankly many of whom are terrorists. So anyway, Frank, I have a very clear, I'm very clear that Asian nationalism could have been a good partner for the United States, and it was a historic geopolitical mistake the United States made in going against Asian nationalism. Even in the case of Vietnam, I believe an accommodation could have been worked out with Vietnamese nationalism, which could have created results much better than what it is now. Today, Vietnam and America are talking to each other. If they started talking to each other in the 1950s, the whole of history of that part of Asia would have been totally different. So, sadly, even today, the Americans are still having a Europeanist mindset. And so long as they have a Europeanist mindset, they cannot be coming together, a complete congruence of Indian and American strategic interests. Because India will definitely oppose any kind of a colonial or semi-colonial kind of a situation coming back. We are very, very unhappy about Iraq and Afghanistan. We're very unhappy that NATO went in there and they tried to run the country and is running the country. In our own case, in 1972, if you remember, we had the Bangladesh war. We went into Bangladesh, liberated Bangladesh, and within 2 months the entire Indian army went back. Not a single soldier of the Indian army remained in Bangladesh. The entire army went back because it is wrong for a foreign army to continue in a country and occupy a country. Now you have been occupying Afghanistan for 10 years, you have been occupying Japan for 60 years or more, I think, right from 1945. The Americans have been occupying Japan and South Korea. And my frank personal view is, it is an ugly sight to see foreign troops there. And I believe that both Japan and North Korea and South Korea would be better off if they defended themselves than if depended on foreign troops to defend. And I know that this is not going to be welcome to many of the people here, but that is my view. And so this is a severe problem that we are facing with the Americans, that they persist in seeing themselves as a European country in America. Their foreign policy think tanks, their administration, the business community is different now, it's liberated itself. But even today the think tanks, the foreign policy community still regards itself as very Europeanist, the Atlantic Alliance, both sides of the Atlantic. What about the Pacific? What about the Indian Ocean? All these are also American lakes in a sense, in terms of commerce. So America is a quadri-continental country. It's a country which has got elements of Latin America, of Africa, of Asia, and of Europe. It should see itself as a quadri-continental country. I mean, if I go back to Taiwanese example, Taiwan is an international island. It's not simply a cross-strait island, it's an international island. And you have to see yourself as an international island. Even the relations across state are excellent, which I hope will become even better. But still remember, fundamentally you're an international island. In the same way, fundamentally, America, in a sense, belongs to the whole world. It does not belong to a single continent. And by limiting its foreign policy in the belief that it belongs to a single continent, it is actually harming its own geostrategic interests. So this Europeanist tendency in the United States is a huge block to better relations with India. Because the Americans cannot